Sometime this month, you opened your investment account, or the savings account you keep meaning to turn into one. You looked at the number. It looked almost exactly like it did last month. You felt nothing, and you closed the app. That moment, the one that felt like nothing, is the most expensive habit you have. And by the end of this video, you'll know exactly why, in dollars. Here's what's coming. A janitor in Vermont who died with $8 million and a coat held together with safety pins. A Harvard-educated Merrill Lynch executive who went bankrupt in the same decade. A brain scan that found a stranger living inside your head. And a famous Einstein quote that turns out to be fake in a way that proves everything this video is about. But first, one number. 1 in 3 adults cannot compute compound interest. That is not a guess. That is the finding of a peer-reviewed study in the Journal of the European Economic Association. 1 in 3. They see a curve, and their brain draws a straight line. And before you feel safe on the other side of that statistic, the same body of research found that 96% of people underestimate compound growth to some degree. The median person perceives roughly half of the actual result. The bias doesn't correlate with education. Degrees don't protect you. Age doesn't protect you. This is not a knowledge problem. You already know what compound interest is. You've seen the chart. Knowing hasn't changed your behavior, and that's not a character flaw. It's a perception problem. It has a name, it has a discovery date, and it has a fix. Let's start with the janitor. In June of 2014, a 92-year-old man named Ronald Reed died in Brattleboro, Vermont. He had spent his working life pumping gas and mopping floors at a JCPenney. His friends occasionally slipped him money for coffee. His coat was literally held together with safety pins. A stranger at a diner once thought he couldn't afford breakfast. When his will was read, Ronald Reed left $8 million. 6 of it went to the local library and hospital. His lawyer was as shocked as everyone else. There was no lottery ticket, no inheritance, no crypto miracle. The estate inventory showed roughly 95 stocks, boring ones, utilities and consumer brands. Some held for decades, dividends reinvested, sitting in a safe deposit box, untouched through at least 6 market crashes. Now hold that image, because in the same era, in Greenwich, Connecticut, a man named Richard Fusconi was living the opposite story. Harvard MBA, University of Chicago, executive at Merrill Lynch. Literally one of the people who ran Wall Street's business in Latin America. He retired in his 40s to a mansion with 2 elevators and 2 pools. In 2010, Fusconi declared personal bankruptcy. The mansion went to foreclosure. A janitor with no financial education died with $8 million. A man with 2 elite degrees who worked at the top of finance lost everything. And if you think Reed was a one-off, consider this. A secretary named Grace Groner bought $180 of stock in 1935, reinvested every dividend, and died in 2010, worth $7 million. Education did not decide these outcomes. Something else did. And in 1975, 2 researchers accidentally filmed that something in a laboratory. In 1975, 2 researchers named Wagoner and Sagaria published a study in the journal Perception in Psychophysics. The task was simple. Look at a series of numbers growing exponentially and estimate where the series would be in the future. The participants were educated adults. 2/3 of them produced estimates below 10% of the correct answer. Not off by half, below 10% of it. They watched the curve accelerate upward, and their brain projected a gentle slope. Here's the part that should concern you. The researchers tried to fix it. They explained exponential growth. They gave examples and instructions. It did not help. The bias stayed. 34 years later, economists Stango and Zinman took that lab finding to the Journal of Finance and gave it a formal name: exponential growth bias. The systematic tendency to linearize compound functions. Using the Federal Reserve's Survey of Consumer Finances, they found that households with the bias borrow more, save less, and choose worse debt. And here's the detail that matters. Even after controlling for income and financial sophistication, the bias remained its own independent predictor of worse outcomes. Now stop, because this means knowing about compound interest and intuitively perceiving compound interest are two different cognitive operations. You can pass the exam and still have the bias. You can be Richard Fusconi, able to explain compounding to a boardroom, and still behave with your own money as if the curve were a line. Your brain is running financial software designed for exponential time on a processor built for the savannah. For 200,000 years, nothing in your ancestors' world compounded. Effort produced visible results in hours or days, or you died. The hardware never needed to see a curve, so it doesn't. What does that blindness cost? Let's put an exact number on it. Take a person who starts investing $300 a month at 25 with $5,000 to start. Assume 7% a year, which is roughly the inflation-adjusted average of the S&P 500 since 1926. By 65, that person has about $847,000. Out of pocket, they contributed about $149,000. The other $700,000 was generated by the growth itself. Money made money, and the money that money made more. Now take the same person, same $300 a month, but starting at 35 instead of 25. The result at 65? $379,000. The difference is $468,000. The late starter invested only $36,000 less. They ended with $468,000 less. 10 years of delay didn't cost 10 years of contributions. It cost the entire back half of the curve. Because the growth in the final decade of a 40-year window dwarfs everything before it. And here is where the bias gets you personally. In the first 10 years, that account barely looks different from a savings account. Remember the beginning of this video. You, looking at a number that hasn't visibly moved, feeling nothing. Your brain sees a flat decade and files a verdict. This is not working. That verdict isn't stupid. It's rational on the wrong time scale. A brain optimizing a 1-year window inside a 40-year process. Which is why even the people who do invest fail to capture the curve. Dalbar, a financial analytics firm, has measured the gap between what the market returns and what the average investor actually earns every year since 1994. In 2024, the S&P 500 returned just over 25%. The average equity investor earned about 16.5%, a gap of roughly 8.5 percentage points, one of the largest in a decade. That gap is not stock picking, it's behavior. Buying when the market feels safe, which is when it's high. Selling when it feels dangerous, which is when it's low. The average investor stays in a fund about 4.5 years. Compound interest needs decades. Most people quit before the curve bends. Ronald Reed's edge was never intelligence. It was that he never delivered the verdict. He held through 1987, through the dot-com crash, through 2008. Decades in which his account, for long stretches, looked like it was doing nothing. So why could a janitor do what a Merrill Lynch executive couldn't? In 2009, a neuroscientist put people in an fMRI machine and found the answer. And it's stranger than you think. Hal Hershfield asked participants to think about two people while he scanned their brains: their current self and their future self at retirement age. When people thought about their future selves, the activation pattern in a region called the rostral anterior cingulate cortex looked less like the pattern for me and closer to the pattern for a stranger. Let me say that one more time. On a brain scan, your 65-year-old self doesn't register as you. It registers as someone you've never met. So look at what you're actually being asked to do every month. Hand over money today. See no visible result for a decade. For the benefit of a person your brain classifies as a stranger. Your brain has a word for that arrangement: punishment. Of course you stop. Of course you start next month. You're not weak. You're wired. But Hershfield didn't stop at the diagnosis. He tested the cure. Participants who were shown age-progressed photographs of themselves, realistic renderings of their own face at 65, allocated more than double to retirement savings. $172 versus $80 in the control group. In field experiments with real employees, contribution rates jumped from about 4.4% to 6.2%. No new information, no lecture, no spreadsheet. They just saw the face. The brain didn't change its math. It changed who the money was for. The stranger became less strange. That's the diagnosis, complete. A growth you can't see, benefiting a person you don't recognize. Now, the fix. 4 mechanisms. None of them require motivation, which is exactly the point, because motivation is the thing your brain refuses to supply. First, automate before you feel it. Behavioral economists Thaler and Benartzi built a program called Save More Tomorrow. Instead of asking employees to save more now, it asked them to commit a slice of future raises. Enrollment was massive, and average savings rates roughly quadrupled, from around 3.5% to over 13%. Separately, when companies switched retirement plans from opt-in to automatic enrollment, participation jumped from roughly half to over 85%. Nobody became more disciplined. The default changed. Your move. Set up an automatic transfer on the day your income arrives, before you see the number, before your brain registers that the money exists. This single action bypasses the entire bias. Ronald Reed's safe deposit box was just a manual version of this, a structure that made not touching the default. Second, make the abstract concrete. Your brain doesn't feel the number 847,000. It feels images. A house with no mortgage, a Monday with no commute, a kid's tuition with 0 loans. Translate the end of your curve into one scene your brain can render, and use the rule of 72 as your mental unit. 72 divided by your annual return. At 7%, money doubles every 10 years. The brain can't hold exponential. It can hold doubles 4 times before I'm 65. Third, give the stranger a face. You don't need an fMRI. Before you skip a month or pull money out, write one sentence. I'm taking this money for this reason, and I accept that 65-year-old me will have this much less because of it. That sentence does what Hirschfield's photograph did. It forces your brain to file the future self under me. Fourth, create reward inside the flat decade. The first years produce nothing visible, and your brain needs dopamine on a shorter cycle than decades. Set milestones. 1,000 invested, 5,000, 10,000, 25,000, and mark each one, not by spending, by recognition. You're collecting evidence that the invisible thing is happening during the exact years the bias says it isn't. Does a system like this actually survive contact with real time? There's one experiment that ran for 200 years, and you already know the man who ran it. When Benjamin Franklin died in 1790, his will contained a strange clause: 1,000 pounds each to the cities of Boston and Philadelphia. Locked. The cities could lend it to young tradesmen, but the principal had to compound, mostly untouched, for 200 years. Franklin understood exactly what he was doing. He was removing the one variable that destroys compounding: human access to the account. No panic selling, no borrowing against it, no verdicts in flat decades. A default nobody could override for 2 centuries. In 1990, the clock ran out. Boston's fund had grown to roughly $5 million, Philadelphia's to over $2 million, from 2,000 pounds. Franklin ran all 4 mechanisms in a single legal document, 200 years before behavioral economics had a name for any of them. Which brings us, finally, to Einstein. You've heard the quote, "Compound interest is the 8th wonder of the world. He who understands it earns it. He who doesn't pays it." Albert Einstein. Except he almost certainly never said it. Quote investigators have traced the earliest versions to bank advertisements from the early 20th century. It appears nowhere in his verified letters, speeches, or papers. Somewhere out there, an anonymous ad copywriter has shaped more retirement accounts than the man who discovered relativity. And that fake quote is the perfect ending, because it proves the thesis. We had to staple the most famous genius in history onto this concept just to make brains pay attention to it. Because compound interest, on its own, produces no signal the brain can feel. That's authority bias, duct-taped over exponential growth bias. 2 biases, 1 bank ad. The concept never needed Einstein. It doesn't need your belief, and it doesn't need your motivation. It needs a system that runs without asking your brain for permission. So, one last time. 1 in 3 adults can't compute compound growth. 96% underestimate it. The median person sees half the result. A janitor who built the system died worth $8 million. A banker who understood the math but had no system went broke. And next month, you'll open that app again, see a number that hasn't moved, and this time you'll know the flatness is not a verdict. It's the first half of a curve. Compound interest doesn't reward the people who understand it best. It rewards the people who refuse to interrupt it. So here's my question for you. Of the 4 mechanisms, automation, concrete images, a face for the stranger, and milestones, which one are you already running, and which one is missing? Tell me in the comments. I read them, and the best answer becomes part of the follow-up video. And if you want to see what happens when the trust behind money itself collapses, the last time Americans held bills that turned in the wallpaper, watch our video on how America survived 86 years with no paper money. It's the other half of this story. And subscribe if you want the rest of the series. The systems that shape your life and the biases that hide them.